Let's take a deep dive into the land of the mystic and the mystical. I'm taking a look today at why the messages are so important and are experiencing such a revival at this moment in time, and why I'm deeply committed to bringing the messages for you. Today, you'll be taken on a journey of how the mystical is defined by those in the know and asked also what it means to you. I'm so deeply curious about your relationship with the mystic and the mystical, and I know that you have a very connected one because you're here. I'll see you in the episode. Welcome back to Mystical Sisterhood. This is your host, Maureen Spielman, and today you've got me on a solo episode. What have I been up to? Well, it's beautiful fall here in Chicago with cooler temps and just sunshine, which is kind of rare. Usually, when the cooler temps come into Chicago, it's accompanied by a lot of clouds and sometimes rain. So I'm just really enjoying standing in the sun, being in the sun, soaking in the rays when I can in the cooler temperatures. I'm not much of a person that loves hot weather. So I'm really enjoying it, have gratitude for it. And if you live here, then you know that it can be snowing by Halloween. So I'm hoping that's not the case. And I'm sending so much love for those affected by the hurricanes down in the south because that's been so catastrophic. And so sending a lot of love and compassion if you're down there or you have family affected by the severe weather. Just to share a little bit about what I've got going on too. I guess I'm about a month into sending my youngest to college, actually almost 2 months. And my older son came back. So I'm in that stage, whatever we call that now, but it's good and it's beautiful. But something significant in my life is that I embarked on the program called The Artist's Way 9 days ago. So many of you know what I'm referring to because you've done it or you've heard of it as many times as I have. And it was a book written by Julia Cameron in 1992. And I think that she was a writer producer. And at the time, she was asked many times over to support people in the unblocking of their creativity. And so had writers come to her, had, I think, like all sorts of creatives and even people who didn't identify as being creative. And it's her process. So there's a book called The Artist Way. I think after she honed her craft is what I want to say, that she created, like, okay, we're going to create this into a work that people all over the world can benefit from. So it's really cool. And there's the book, The Artist Way, which kind of breaks down creating time in your life, introspection for creativity every week. And then it's accompanied by the morning pages. And so if you venture into the program or if you have, I did buy it off Amazon and it comes with the morning pages journal. And I'll tell you, there are 3 pages you write every day. So you're supposed to write them first thing in the morning. And I think it can be, I've been doing kind of stream of consciousness. And the idea is that when you're writing with such flow, that you are also unblocking. And so I'm super excited to be on day 9 because I feel like this is an admittance because, we're supposed to be good. We're supposed to be good meditators. We're supposed to be good journalers. But pen to paper has been challenging for me. So this is like a time when I've really been able to commit to the pen to the paper. And it's been really fun. And I have a few women within my circle who are doing it. And so, if that has been something that you've done, let me know about your experiences. I'm committed to do the 12-week program. So that's sort of a fun thing in the background that I really wanted to experience. And so far, beautiful. And you take yourself on an artist date too. And last week I went to the paint store and I picked up some items for painting. And I think tomorrow, when I go to my kids' college town, I'm going to go to the Fine Arts Museum. So you do things, you push yourself out of your comfort zone. And for the artist date, you have to go by yourself, which is funny because I don't know about you, but like when I think of like, oh, I could do this and this and this, I'm a connector, like I'm a people person. So I could take so and so. And it's like, no, you can't. You go by yourself. Circling back, that's a little bit of background what I've been up to. But I also, when this airs, this solo episode, I will be at episode 95. And although I haven't yet decided what I'm going to do for episode 100, I am excited about it. It is a milestone and meaningful to me just because it's such a significant number. I want to, know some numerology around that and significance. So I'll be settling into that. But I just sometimes when I come on, I want to share how I continue to love this platform and it continues to light me up. Yes, because I have amazing guests who I feel when I sit with them just inspired, and they come to share their excitement. They bring their energy, their inspiration for us, their wisdom and knowledge in whatever field they work in. And it's kind of funny because it can be something more specific. Like next week, I'm going to do an interview on human design. This Friday will be around angels. So those will be upcoming episodes. But it's just like bringing these voices out into the world. And I'm going to get into today, like the mystical and why it's so magical. But I'm going to just say I love so much to be in the presence of someone who has allowed themselves to either hone their craft for those who have come and have been doing their work for many years, or for those of us who are discovering right now that we have these talents, that we have these gifts, that we are bringing our special offering alive to the world now. That is so beautiful. So if you've been here, then you know that I've interviewed just a really wide variety of mystics and healers and intuitives. And I always say other courageous souls, because for some of us, we're stepping out now and allowing ourselves to shine, stepping out of the shadows. It is not the easiest work. And I have a feeling too, it's because my friend Alicia, in one of the Alicia Isaac's house on her website, yoursoulstory.com, she has a free course she does around money. But in it, she talks about the witch wound. And I'm really fascinated. I could do a whole episode on that, about the witch wound and how women were persecuted across time for coming forward as healers, intuitives, mystics. And so perhaps that is a seed for me to bring that forward. But I'm really fascinated by that because it's women speaking their truth and their passion. And let's just face it, a lot of women, they carry a lot of healing energy, however that is channeled. And that's so needed right now in the world. But what I hope for you, I was going to say, if you're new here, make yourself at home and discover which episodes speak to you. And I'm not just a voice on the other side of the microphone. Reach out to me. Reach out to me if you're curious about why I do this, or someone great to interview, or an idea you had. And I'll link up, but the easiest thing is hello@maureenspielman.com. And that's in the show notes. So you can visit that too. But I always hope that a spark is lighted within you, igniting some quieter or dormant part of yourself that leads you to some greater self realization, or maybe some inkling of your own personal growth. So when I went to write this today, I was thinking about, and maybe this is inaccurate, but a lesser known or talked about element is my own evolution and what I'm experiencing in the process. Creating this podcast has placed me in the seat of choosing guests and the topics that are aligned with, I believe, my soul mission, which is sort of everything I'm talking about today. This is at least part of it. And the podcast has also been a learning vehicle of sorts for me. I have gotten to practice how to have trust in my process. I am in the process of discovering what my process is and leaning into the not knowing, surrendering to what is happening, and a vehicle or a modality or a portal of this podcast that I knew nothing about. Yet I'm really thrilled to sit here and say that I believe that I followed my intuition all along. And what I did was trust and trust again and trust it again. And I've gone with the way that it's felt in my body. And I've said it before, but whenever I get off an interview, whenever I write an email to a guest to ask if they'll come on, to share the assets from the day the podcast releases, I get super excited. And so it's like this trust and this knowing that's coming from within. Yeah. So what I want to say to you is if you have something that is a burning desire or an idea or something that comes to you again and again, it has meaning. Or something that comes to you that resembles something that came to you in the past. Perhaps it's around a similar topic or an area that you love. That it's so important. It's coming to you for a reason. If there's something that is wanting to come alive within you, I now have this lived experience of what does that feel like? And I hold the Creator Connections group on Tuesdays at 10. And we have great fun in that group because we bring what we're working on. And quite honestly, not only dream it into being and having legs and bringing about the details, but also the human parts of ourselves that come with it, which is the resistance, the frustration, the ego identity, overwhelm, doubt, confusion, all of it. But I love that work both within the group and individually supporting what you want to bring to life and doing so in a creativity sense, a business sense, and in the lens of the mystical or the spiritual, and that you are held by a loving universe and that it is here for you and just all the topics we talk about here. I wrote down a few things that as I'm migrating towards episode 100 that I've learned about this mystical of sisterhoods. And I'm going to share those things. And these are just like a compilation, but there is enough interest in the topics that I'm bringing forth that, and mind you, I'm a small homegrown podcast, but right now I'm at 12,100 something downloads. And I'm reading a book by Mirabai Starr right now. And in the book, it's a book about mystics. I'm going to title it in just a little bit. But she said, we are deeply drawn to the essence of the world's wisdom ways. Yeah, I love it so much. I underlined it in the book. We are deeply drawn to the essence of the world's wisdom ways. These are the wisdom ways that are starting to come forward, have existed since ancient times. And people have been doing this work. I'm not saying that it's not been out there or that it's all new, but there's more voices coming forward, willing to stand in their truth, willing to share it, and seeing the need for it. So there's that with the fun downloads and all of that. And then there are enough guests and topics that there's never a shortage of wisdom for me to share and my guests to share. My guests, I feel, are really generous, and I feel my listeners are as well, sharing episodes that strike a chord and thinking of friends who might benefit. So, thank you for sharing for any of you. I've got a few of you in my inner circle that I know share and share away when it's a topic that you feel someone in your world will benefit from. So, I greatly appreciate that because that's what allows a homegrown podcast to grow. So, I love that. Mystical resources. So, this platform allows mystical resources, whether they're concepts or practices, to have a spotlight on. I kind of just said this, but to be rediscovered in the world. And I know that there's a thirst and excitement for it and what is being offered on this podcast because I hear it from guests, the topics that resonate and what speaks to you. I really believe that in the newest of senses, more and more mystical conversations are coming out of the shadows and being embraced by a wide variety of individuals. To me, that means the collective is seeking this information for whatever reason it is for you or them. And also, it's what I know about my part in the process is there's something that's being tapped into that's an ancient knowing coming from within me to take part in this work. I don't have the answers to that right now and the why, but I'm really, let's just use the word mystified by it. It's awesome. And that's work that I'm starting to step into more. I just joined, I'm going to do a quote by her in just a minute, but Rebecca Campbell has an inner temple mystery school. And I joined that because I'm at this phase in my life and my coaching that I obviously have almost 2 years of a mystical podcast, and I'm allowing myself to sink into the mystical and to live out the mystical. And it's one of the reasons when I had Shiva Rose on, but Shiva Rose is very much into the mystical. And I had my eye on her since I was a younger woman. And I asked her and she came to the podcast and I was so thrilled. And she just does such beautiful work. But it's just like a really feminine, intimate energy that it brings. And that's what I'm often enamored by. because I cover both healers and intuitives and spiritual leaders who practice soul work, past life work, channelers, mediums, specialists in the healing arts. And then I sometimes think of like the life coaches and the therapists and the purpose coaches, that the topics here on Mystical Sisterhood has really spanned a wide playing field in a sense, but I'm always talking about the ways that we are in connection with ourselves. I really think that's first and foremost what we're doing here. But then how can we be in this place of really the keen and deep interest in knowing ourselves and learning to remember who we truly came to be and learn to live out our fullest lives and potential as our most authentic selves. Some of these words are thrown around a lot. They fit. They're good with me. And for purposes of this podcast at this moment in time, I always like to redefine and say, like, where are you now? And I love that. It's permission in every single day to define whatever you want to define in your own way. For me, I think I started piecing together many episodes ago for me that the mystical, because I was doing this thing around like connection to self, connection to community, but connection to something greater, the universe. And so I consider the mystical that which we cannot see, yet we have a curiosity about, and also a deep knowing of the truth around. Other definitions of the mystical, which I thought were really interesting, is Rebecca Campbell, who is a well known mystic, says that a mystic is someone who longs to have a direct experience with the sacred. I love this definition because is that you? I thought of you when I thought of that definition. Where in your life do you crave a direct experience with the sacred? Where have you experienced it and want more of it? I love that definition because I think it really leaves us wanting more. And I think that makes me think of what is the sacred to you. I think in modern day spirituality, traditional church is not always talked about, but maybe for you, it's sitting in a church or a temple or with a more religious group. Maybe it's sitting with a cup of tea in the late afternoon in a good book. Maybe it's holding your child's hand or your mother's hand. It could be remembering a loved one. I think there's so many, the mystical is so many sacred moments. And having gone through a recent significant loss, the mystical is in the sacredness of the moments of our lives. And so that in that sense, the mystical is everywhere. The Cambridge Dictionary defines mystical as relating to the belief that there is a hidden meaning in life, or that each human being can unite with God or source or the universal presence. That, again, that which we cannot see. I think that's the one that naturally came to me as I've done this work with people, is that which we cannot see. It's the mystery. Caroline Meese, who is a very well-known, I'm just going to call her a wisdom teacher or a thought leader, says, I think this is from her website, a mystical experience is an experience of the nature of what can't be seen, or the nature of the sacred. So it can't be seen and sacred once again, of the nature of something holy. And I think we have, she goes on to say, a mechanism in us, a need to be in awe. We want to have experiences that somehow position our physical life as secondary to a much greater atmosphere. It reminds me, a good friend of mine just became a grandmother. And I can only imagine to be in that birthing room, the awe that took place for their family. A great book. I just mentioned this author by Mirabai Starr entitled Wild Mercy, Living the Fierce and Tender Wisdom of the Women Mystics. In it, she writes, love this too. For women mystics, contemplative life is not so much a matter of transcending the illusions of mundane existence or attaining states of perfect equanimity as it is about becoming as fully present as possible to the realities of the human experience. And she asks, how do we make space in our lives for this kind of sacred seeing? Right there, sacred seeing, that topic alone is so beautiful. And the mystical, for me, is also the mystery of our lives. The mystery is that which we cannot see, that we don't have all the answers for. It's once we've learned one lesson, another one comes, life and death and everything in between. And just to kind of segue like into questioning why I'm at the helm of bringing this mystical in this form, it's being done everywhere. but in this form to the forefront. And I have several thoughts around this. And I think one of them is that historically, a lot of these conversations have been perceived as, and you may notice that I really never use that word within the framework of mystical sisterhood because I so greatly believe that it is valid and legitimate. Like, I don't think that I could do this and relegate it to any woo corner if I did not know in my own heart, just speaking for myself, that it was as worthy as any other offering on this earthly plane. And I looked up where did even woo woo come from, and it said that it was first recorded in the 1980s, and it was used to mock beliefs associated with a new age culture. Probably like if it came in the early 80s, you have to think it was a byproduct of all the expansion that was happening in consciousness in the 1970s. I won't go down that rabbit hole, but I've come to the conclusion that it's really important for me because, again, we are at a time in history where a multitude of modalities and perspectives are not only being welcomed, but they're really needed right now to approach creatively the challenges that our society is facing. And we may see them alchemize and blend in greater ways. I mean, yeah, I was going to say there are beautiful offerings being made. So if I could be anywhere in a solution or offering a resource, like I'm all in. Why me at the helm? Because I'm fascinated by the mystical. Obviously, took me a little bit to put this episode together, but I'm fascinated by the mystical. And I am unearthing more of it within me all the time. I'm committed to that. And I resonate with the idea that the mystical is about the sacred. And to me, the sacred is the slowing down. Like I just named a few things, but it's the slowing down, taking notice, taking in the present moment, being in gratitude, practicing awe, being curious about what makes you tick, being curious about how to love yourself more, how to shed what's not yours. I know for myself, the reason I'm at the helm of this podcast is because one of my soul lessons is to learn to communicate and share my thoughts, opinions, voice clearly, and know that that's worthy of sharing with the world, that the way I see the world is worthy. And so you've probably seen over time, you're hearing my voice than you did in the beginning. And that's been a process to allow myself to know that I have something to say of worth to someone. If it's one person, namaste. Thank you. I'm not really concerned about, even though I noted the downloads, I'm not really concerned. Dr. Shafali used to say one is a million. And I love that because if you affect change in one person, then you affect everyone they affect, and it's exponential. And I think in transparency too, that, and I've kind of alluded to this, but the other side that's a more of a shadow side for me is knowing that I am part of the mystical rising. I just made that up. I have loved to be by other mystics' sides that are just willing to take up so beautifully so much space for almost 2 years. Through the interviews, I've allowed my love of the mystic to guide the conversations. And also, just God, I never thought I would be talking about soul conversations. And my training with Dr. Shafali and Susie Lula and soul care certification and 3 years of soul care mastery or two and a half, whatever it is that have followed, I'm very comfortable talking on a soul level now and coaching individuals around their soul's journey and the meaning of the experiences in their lives from a soul perspective. I love it so much. And I believe that the mystical to me, it feels like guidance from the soul. And I grew up Catholic. So, of course, I heard a lot about the soul, but I can't remember. And I think it felt meaningless. It didn't have like significance or direct meaning for me as a kid. But as I alluded to before or said, we get to recreate what things mean to us. And it's like being a kid on a playground. And you get to go back now, and recreate what you thought you knew about something and adopt new definitions. And I just love it so much. So I'm giving you permission to do that if you haven't already. But I really believe my soul led me to name something Mystical Sisterhood. And that actually feels very profound to me. A neat thing that I read in the first chapter of The Artist's Way was that some of us can stay in the role of the shadow artist. And I thought that was fascinating. I didn't really see myself at first, but I wonder if I was more comfortable being a shadow artist, meaning the person who was exalting the mystic without taking up the space myself. And I do love that role, I have to say. Like when I was like thinking about the shadow artist, I'm like, I could be a PR person for mystics, for gosh sakes. But I think that the lessons are unfolding if we're willing to look at life like that. And I feel that the mystical, as it unfolds in me, I won't just be that shadow artist. I will be willing to take up space and to share my own perspectives with you. And I love that because that's the shadow work. I love shadow artists are to me, they're related to shadow work. And I think shadow work's fascinating. And I've done a lot of it over the past couple of years because it's really the parts inside of us that don't allow us to be seen for whatever reason, or we feel are dark and we closet away and we don't allow to take up space or have that light shown on them. And so perhaps those places in you that are a little shadowy, but one of my shadow sides was definitely not taking up space and feeling like run over by other people's voices and things like that. And that's here for me. That's definitely here for me. So, with that, I'm going to close out this mystical episode. And I want to ask you some questions. And these are just to hold in your heart and think about. When did you first discover that you had an interest in the mystical or your current definition of spirituality or soul work? I was thinking perhaps it was through a friend who dropped a comment in a conversation and you were like, wait, what? Or maybe it was someone asked you a question about how you used your intuition and you're like, wait, what? Intuition, I don't use it. Or maybe someone brought you a deck of oracle cards and you either embrace them or maybe you denied them at first and then you embrace them. But I'm just curious. And so please email me if you see me on the street, if just share with me where this resides in you and what your first memories of knowing you were different or that mystical ideas sparked something beautiful in you. And how have you owned it or not owned it in your life or partially owned it? And what happens or happened when you've shown up with your more mystical or spiritual side showing? Or is that an intention you have for yourself? And if you have that mystical side, do you own it now? Are you owning it? Are you leading with that? You don't have to. We can keep these totally quiet and be in ritual in our own homes and personal practices and still get great delight and awe from them. Beautiful. They're a great way to set us up for just expansive days. So I love that. It could be the lighting of the candle you do in the morning, but I'm so curious about your practices. And I see the mystical everywhere I turn, the mystery of life and what we cannot see yet will greatly aid us in understanding our lives and the greater world. I can only figure that I am a mystic in past lives and therefore, I am here for this endeavor in this role this time around. So I invite you to get in touch with the sacred. What does mystical mean to you? Why do you tune into this show? What makes you sit up straight and listen and lean in? Does your soul stir? Is there a remembering somewhere deep inside of you? You are not just interested, but there's a deeper reason why. Just know it, why you listen, why you do the work, why it goes deep into the fibers of your being, and you just can't not do it. So I'll leave it there. I'm going to be forming groups this fall, both virtually in person, but I really want to know what you would love to hear about on the podcast, what you might want to participate in it, what you're craving, groups that you might request, anything regarding soul, mystical, spirituality. I'm here for it all. And if you have a desire, any desire in your heart to join me in private coaching to bring more ritual and spiritual practices into your life around the greater mystery, or tap into why your soul came to this particular soul's journey, it's the work I love and would be honored to speak with you on a complimentary phone call. So reach me at the regular channels, hello@maureenspielman.com. I'm at Maureen Spielman on Instagram and On Facebook, you can join the private Facebook page, which is Mystical Sisterhood. And I'll see you where I see you, but I am sending you so many blessings and blessings that you tap into why the mystical is so important to you. And please share. I'm here for you and I'm here for all of it. All right. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to this episode of Mystical Sisterhood. To learn more about my one-on-one coaching programs or join the Mystical Sisterhood membership, visit MaureenSpielman.com or MysticalSisterhood.com. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next episode.